afternoon and welcome to Newsline. I'm Kelsey Rutino.
And I'm Joshua Dorr. Coming up today, how construction of the Melbourne Metro Tunnel is affecting small businesses. And we bring you further developments about the Australian soccer coach's future. But first, to local breaking news with Eleanor Webster. Eleanor?
Thank you, Joshua. We start with some breaking news. Police have been called to suspected human remains at Anglesea. Melbourne mother Elisa Curry has been missing since the AFL Grand Final, but we have no confirmation that it is her. If we receive any information, we will let you know. And the Fair Work Commission's decision to cut Sunday penalty rates has been backed by the Federal Court. Unions had challenged the cut, saying the Commission failed to consider the impact it would have on low-income earners. And households in New South Wales, South Australia and Victoria could receive text messages about potential heatwaves from their electricity providers this coming summer. The texts will urge households to turn off their air conditioners in times of extreme heat. This will reduce the amount of energy on the grid and lower the likelihood of a blackout. While there is no obligation to adhere to the messages, substantial discounts will be offered to those who do. Back to you, Joshua.
An important message to remember this summer. Thank you, Eleanor. Well, the Melbourne Metro Tunnel project is well underway, and while many local businesses have packed up and left, one CBD cafe is determined to stay. Chanel Zagon reports.
This cafe is surrounded by construction. They are one of the many local businesses affected by the Melbourne Metro Tunnel project. Finding the cafe is almost like going on a treasure hunt. To get there, patrons must walk through a long corridor of construction. Owner Luke Taylor says the constant works and roadblocks have been the most frustrating.
I've noticed small drops in sales throughout the 8 to 9 month period this has been going on. But it is those big disruptions where the footpath's closed and we've got really noisy equipment out the front. That's where people, they're coming in and saying, we've got to leave.
The $11 billion project is the Victorian Government's biggest investment in public transport. 5 new train stations will be built, 2 of which in the CBD, but at the cost of others. Other businesses in the area have simply picked up and left. Swanston Street's Hungry Jack's and 7-Eleven being among the few. Luke says the cafe underwent sound checks to test for noise and disruption, but they came back inconclusive.
I did question the process and whether it was accurate enough.
Metro have said they aim to keep businesses informed throughout the entire process.
The Melbourne Metro Tunnel project won't be finished for at least another decade, which means local businesses are in it for the long haul.
But the cafe is determined to stay open and continue to deliver quality coffee. Chanel Zagon, Newsline.
As the end of the year draws near, Australian students will see the beginning of their exam period. With thousands of students under pressure to achieve their desired ATAR score, Eleanor Webster takes a look at whether the current method of testing is working.
With final exams just around the corner, high school students have begun intense study and some will reach peak stress levels. Past students say they could have achieved more under less pressure.
I always found I've done quite a bit better in those sort of environments where there's no actual pressure to achieve a good score.
The system, not having changed for some time, could use a more modern approach, with the exams currently catering to those who fulfil the traditional academic ideal of success. Victorian schools implement additional testing through school-assessed coursework, otherwise known as SACs.
So you've got all these tests throughout the year and then the big exam. So the SACs, you have say 6 or 7, depends on the subject, per subject.
Are the very long and heavily weighted Year 12 exams worth the stress they're causing Australian students? Many parents and academics across the country are questioning whether the current method of testing gives every student the best chance at success. Professor Marcia Devlin of RMIT University thinks it's time for a change in priorities.
The way it's set up at the moment, there's an enormous amount of pressure, and so what Year 12 exams test at the moment is test-taking ability, ability to cope under pressure, as well as intellectual ability. So I think the first 2 aren't as important as the current system makes them out to be, so I don't think it's a good system.
Eleanor Webster, Newsline.
A project aiming to link Docklands to Melbourne's CBD has now begun. Tara Cozzoletto looks at the precinct and why it's gained a reputation as a place where nobody wants to go.
Docklands was touted as the next big thing in Melbourne, but in reality, it's a ghost town.
It's never quite taken off. You know, people in Melbourne don't say, oh, let's go down to Docklands.
It was redeveloped in the late 1990s with the aim of turning the flagging shipping port into a go-to destination. A 50,000-seat stadium was built on the waterfront, as was apartments, office buildings and restaurants. But Professor Dovey says initial urban planning mistakes have harmed the precinct.
I think it was very badly handled. It's got a long history. A lot of really bad decisions were made very early on, and Docklands will only get better, but off a pretty low base.
In the last 10 years, the Star Observation Mill and the Harbour Town Shopping Centre were opened in Docklands in a renewed effort to draw more people to the area. But experts say it hasn't worked.
And that shopping mall has performed really badly economically.
But those who frequent the area are much more positive.
There was quite a lot of bad press about Docklands being soulless, and that has just not been my experience at all.
Well, we actually accidentally came here. We meant to go to DFO and came to Docklands instead, and then realised this wasn't DFO.
I mean, good place to hang out, and sometimes I come with my family as well.
While there is hope the area will pick up in the future, Professor Dovey says developers originally missed the chance of a lifetime.
It was the best sort of big opportunity that the city has ever seen, and it's a bit of a shame we squandered it.
Tara Cozzoletto, Newsline.
You're watching Newsline. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this short break with the latest in international news. This series of push-ups. How you going, Gordon?
All right.
The ring in.
How you going, Josh? Ring in. Last minute on the B team.
You're A-list to me.
I'm helping. Oh, thank you, Shannon. Are they all right?
Could we get you two to just sort of speak in a conversation as you would? We just test
Sure.
on the mics.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the Go Shorten.
The what?
Show.
Welcome to the Go Shorten. Yeah, thank you very much, Shannon. It's still nice to be here.
Show, Gordon.
Good to
Thank
be
you
here.
so much for joining us today.
I didn't have anything better to do, so you know what the fuck.
Welcome back to Newsline. I'm Joshua Daw.
And I'm Kelsey Rutino. Let's take a look at what's making headlines around the globe with Lauren Muscat. Over to you, Lauren.
Thanks, Kelsey. The citizens of Catalonia have voted for independence from Spain following an illegal plebiscite held on the 1st of October. Catalonia's president, Carles Puigdemont, and other regional politicians signed a document declaring the region's independence from Spain last night. but its implementation has been suspended in the hope of conducting talks with Madrid. In Hollywood, Gwyneth Paltrow and Angelina Jolie have joined a growing list of women making accusations of sexual harassment against film producer Harvey Weinstein. The New York Times published an investigation against Weinstein last Thursday, detailing a history of sexual harassment and abuse allegations. The Weinstein Company board fired Weinstein shortly after the expose was published. Bangladesh border guards have reported an influx of more than 11,000 Rohingya refugees on Monday alone. More than 500,000 Rohingya have fled Myanmar in the weeks following a violent military crackdown on August 25th. The rate of refugees leaving the country had slowed to approximately 2,000 people per day last week until this week's increase. UNHCR spokesman Adrian Edwards says the agency is unsure what has driven the surge in refugee arrivals. And that's all in world news for today. Back to you, Kelsey.
Thanks, Lauren. Now, some of the most vulnerable people in our population are subject to neglect, mistreatment or abuse in residential aged care facilities. A handful of government reviews claim to be investigating incidences of neglect in nursing homes, but some doubt whether this will lead to change. Shannon Schubert reports.
Linda's entrance into the realm of aged care was hardly by choice.
My dad had a sudden and very severe stroke. He had lost the ability to walk, to talk and to swallow. He needed people to represent him and for his voice to be heard, and that's why I set up Aged Care Crisis.
And she soon realised she's not the only one suffering the heartbreak of a family member gone too soon because of the quality of care.
Older people die prematurely, die because of other people's actions, die from things that are preventable.
Professor Joseph Ibrahim works clinically and as a researcher at the Victorian Institute of Forensic Medicine. A report he published in the Medical Journal of Australia found preventable deaths in nursing homes increased by 400% over the last decade.
But what's under there? What are the serious injuries that don't lead to death? So how many people fall? How many people leave a nursing home and can't be found? How many people get pneumonia from choking but don't die?
The latest and greatest nursing home scandal involves 2 Oakden aged care mental health facilities in Adelaide. The centres closed down after reports of a death, restraints, neglect, and over-medication. A raft of reviews, inquiries and investigations were announced early this year as a result.
We haven't seen any evidence of any of the reforms address the quality of care being delivered to the bedsides of residents.
Several recommendations have been made by groups like Aged Care Crisis, but the same long-standing question remains. Will the government take up these gutsy recommendations? And will these reviews, which are conducted behind closed doors, leave us once again with more questions than answers?
We're really comfortable with saying it's an aged care problem because we imagine that we're never going to be 90 and we're never going to need it. And so I don't think we care about it as much as we should.
Shannon Schubert, Newsline.
Same-sex marriage discussions around the country have flared during the voluntary postal survey. As it dominates the headlines in the country's major cities, some of Victoria's regional communities are leading the way in a show of support for marriage equality. Reporter Rochelle Kirkham joined them in Daylesford.
Daylesford, a small tourist town 1.5 hours northwest of Melbourne, is flying rainbow flags in a show of support for the region's LGBTQI community. Hepburnshire Council voted to fly the rainbow flag in Daylesford's main street.
For some years now, Hepburnshire Council has had a policy supporting same-sex marriage, and so it's a no-brainer for us to be wanting to come out and demonstrate that we're very strongly behind a yes vote.
Local shop traders have also jumped on board the campaign, posting rainbow flags and Vote Yes for Gay Marriage posters in shop windows. Daylesford nursery owner Louise McLaughlin and her partner Deb Clark asked fellow traders to put up the signs after becoming furious at the announcement of the voluntary postal survey in August.
Dales was in a really good position to set the example for what it is to be inclusive with the gay community. We really lived hand in hand. I'd say we're almost a 50% population of gay and straight, and no one even feels it in Daylesford. It's incredible.
Like other same-sex couples across the country, Louise and Deb want the right to legally marry.
A lot of our friends said, why don't you get married overseas? And we thought, why would we get married overseas when we come home and it's null and void, it's not recognised anyway legally?
On Daylesford's main street, you can see that this community is supportive and inclusive of the region's LGBTQI community. But many are hoping this visible show of support can change attitudes beyond the town's border.
I think it's quite incredible actually, for both tourists and locals, and perhaps even for gay people who are visiting this town to see that life is possible.
Rochelle Kirkham in Daylesford for Newsline.
6 months after blitzing an experienced field in the women's stole gift, Liv Ryan is facing an uphill battle when she begins a new running season at the back of the field. Only one person has ever gone back-to-back in the famous event's 140 years. But as Joshua Dorr found out, proving the doubters wrong is what this young star is all about.
For a teenager, taking out Australia's most prestigious foot race, an extended holiday was well deserved. But for Liv Ryan, every day of her 6-week break was torture.
I hate not running, so I kind of just, as soon as it was like, I just wanted to get back into it because I just don't like having a break.
Now she's back to work for the upcoming season, increasing her workload to 3 speed-focused track sessions a week, on top of 3 sessions in the gym. She's already noticing the results.
I'm feeling stronger in the gym, like not taking as long to get back to strength, which is nice, and yeah, feeling progressions in strength and being able to put that onto the track.
Her coach Craig Mayer has also observed the winning impact away from training.
For days afterwards, people were looking at her sideways going, I know that girl, where do I know? And they'd come up and say hello and say, oh, congratulations.
Ryan has settled into a country she now calls home since moving from Europe 2 years ago. While her homeschool commitments build, she still hasn't missed a session in over a year.
I mean, almost put study as the second thing, training's my first, number one, so yeah, it's good. I think it's easier definitely being at home, being able to take the time out to train when I need to.
However, there is one side effect to her rising profile, with her handicap set to fall dramatically. But Mayer says the win has instilled confidence in what his star pupil is able to accomplish.
You actually dream of people like this that are prepared to put the work in and have the talent to actually pull something off afterwards.
Ryan will ramp up her training before the season commences in November. While back-to-back stall titles would be a miracle, there's another achievement she believes truly is possible. One day fulfilling a childhood dream and representing her new country at the Olympics.
2024 Paris Olympics have been elected, so that'd be really special and definitely something to work towards.
Joshua Dorr, Newsline. One to watch, and we wish Liv all the best for the upcoming season. Well, food, students and sustainability make a great combination, but at what expense? With an abundance of meal options for starving students, Meg McKenna explores the affordability of organic food alternatives at RMIT University.
The concept of locally grown and sustainable food is widely embraced among Australians. Now, with the world of information at our fingertips, awareness of sustainable food and lifestyle practices are spreading fast, particularly among young people. Sustainable food is better for the environment, the ingredients are without preservatives, and it's healthier. So what's the catch? For university students at RMIT, it's the price.
Usually I find that the organic stuff can be a bit out of the price range sometimes.
It's expensive. That's the main thing. Ben McMenamin and his team from the Social Food Project are providing a temporary solution to the problem with their pop-up store, the Local Lunchbox. The pop-up sells cheap, healthy lunchboxes, and after hours, Ben holds cooking workshops for students.
I always kind of flinch a little bit when people say, I can't afford to eat well. I think, that's a result of not understanding how you can cook well in an affordable way.
Other than the local lunchbox, RMIT has seen a serious lack of healthy and sustainable food options in the city campus for almost a year. This is mainly due to the construction of the new academic street. But the question is the university going to do anything about the lack of sustainable food options once this is all finished?
On the question of providing more sustainably sourced food here on campus, the issue is it's a point of competitiveness. So I would like to see it, but obviously when it comes down to it, sustainably sourced food does come at a cost.
While we know that cheap and sustainable food is out there, it's up to both universities and students to make it a priority. Meg McKenna, Newsline.
After the break, we'll be looking at the importance of getting your facts right in news, and how this could even apply to statements made by the Prime Minister.
We'll be right back.
Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline with Kelsey Rutino
and Joshua Daw. In a world saturated with information, it's becoming increasingly difficult to tell fact from fiction. RMIT ABC Fact Check was put together to make sure what we're being told by our politicians and public figures is true. Gordon Farrer from the RMIT ABC Fact Check unit joins Shannon Schubert live in the studio now.
Thanks, Josh. Welcome to the show, Gordon. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Shannon.
Now, today your Fact Check unit investigated the Prime Minister's claim that there are more women in his cabinet than any previous government, and your unit found this claim to be false. Can you briefly run us through the process of investigating a claim like this?
Well, basically the Fact Check unit aims to identify claims that are made by politicians and other public figures and then test whether they're true or not. And one of the reasons we do that is that it's important for public discourse to be based on sort of a set of agreed upon facts so that we're all working from the same information. We choose a fact and we check it by approaching the person who made the statement or the office of the person who made that statement and ask them for their evidence for what they base that on. That can be a report, it can be a study that's been done, or it can be anecdotal evidence sometimes. Not good for the politician. It's anecdotal. The journalist then assesses the information that's offered to them, checks those sources, and then looks more widely than the sources that have been offered to the journalist. They might start with an initial report, then they'll go and speak to a couple of experts in the field. They might go to speak to a couple of academics, look for some more issues-related reports on that, and get the whole context around the particular statement that's being made. Because quite often, a fact is not a fact unless you understand that it exists within a context.
It's really interesting. And in the digital age of social media, why should people who are not journalists care about fact-checking?
Well, I think it's important if we want to make informed decisions about how we vote, for example, we want to make sure that the information that we're basing those decisions on are factual. There's too much misinformation slopping around on social media especially, and it's easy for people to just take that in and accept it as true simply because it's been shared to them by friends or by organisations that they feel comfortable with. It's important for people to understand that not everything that comes to them on social media is true, and they should have a healthy level of cynicism, I guess, about the sort of information that comes to them. And it's important that people care about whether things are true or not before they make a decision based on that information.
You're watching Newsline. We're talking to RMIT and ABC fact-checker Gordon Farrer. Now, Gordon, in the current media environment, we've talked about fact-checking, and of course there is a recent example of President Trump and fake news. What's your thoughts on fake news?
There's a problem with the term fake news itself. It used to mean something very specific, and that was news that was fictitious, but it was designed to look like news and to deceive people. So there might be the case of, for example, Hillary Clinton running a pedophile ring out of an LA Pizza Hut, or pizza store, which was presented as real news. It's actually a fictitious piece of news. A lot of this was coming out of Macedonia. Students and a bunch of kids were making up stuff and making money out of it, because if you could make something that's interesting enough for people to want to share, click it on social media, they make a couple of cents each time, and they made a lot of money doing that.
I'll have to cut you off there, Gordon. That's all we have time for today. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Back to you, Kelsey.
Thanks, Shannon. That's a really interesting and important conversation for us to be having, so thank you for bringing that to us this afternoon. Moving on to sports now, Jared McAleese has the latest. Over to you, Jared.
Thanks for that, Kelsey. 2 goals from Tim Cahill have moved the Socceroos one step closer to the 2018 World Cup after a nervy 2-1 win over Syria. Level on aggregate after the first leg, disaster struck early as Omar Al-Somar put Syria ahead 1-0. But Australia's all-time leading goalscorer drew the host level with a trademark header minutes later. Australia desperately searched for a winner, but were unable to break down the gritty Syrians as the game went to extra time. With penalties looming, Cahill struck again with his 50th international goal to seal a tense Australian win. As Joshua alluded to at the top of the show, reports have been rife that Ange Postecoglou is planning to step down as Socceroos coach. But it may not be as simple as that. Here is what Ange had to say in a statement today. My sole focus is on preparing the team for our final 2 matches. I will not let anything compromise this team's journey. Results in this afternoon's CONCACAF fixtures have determined Australia's opponent in the final playoff for a World Cup spot. The Socceroos will face Honduras in a 2-legged tie in December. To cricket, and Australia's 8-wicket win over India in the second 2020 match has been soured by an attack on the team's bus after the game. A rock was thrown at the bus as the team travelled back to their hotel, but luckily no one was sitting near the smashed window. Earlier, Jason Behrendorff snared 4 wickets, while Moises Enriquez and Travis Head's century stand completed a comfortable run chase. And that's all we have time for today in sport. Back to you, Josh.
Testing times ahead for our Socceroos. They certainly can't rely on Tim Cahill saving them all the time. Thanks for those updates, Jared. Time now to take a look at our weather with Sinead Horn. And Sinead, it's been a typical Melbourne turnaround in the last 24 hours.
Thanks, Joshua, it sure has. Unfortunately, we've had to say goodbye to yesterday's beautiful and short-lived sunshine. It's been a very cloudy day today, though still warm with a top of 25 degrees. There's a high chance of rain this evening with northwesterly winds at 25 to 35 kilometres an hour. Tomorrow's temperature is expected to drop to a cool 18 degrees, with tonight's showers continuing into the morning. This will clear into the afternoon, where we can expect to see some sunshine with some light northwesterly winds. Friday will be cloudy, with possible showers throughout the day and another top of 18 degrees. Fortunately, things are looking to warm up for the weekend. And that's the forecast. Back to you guys.
Thanks for that, Sinead. That's all for today. A huge thank you to the cast and crew behind today's show. And of course, thanks to everyone for watching. I'm Kelsey Rotino.
And I'm Joshua Dorr. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for more Newsline.